Hello, in my last tutorial I went through and I showed you how to set up a blueprint using basic static mesh actors. Alright. So I'm going to do something a little bit more complex. It's basically the same thing. I'm going to combine other actors together. This is not necessarily what is considered best practice, and I'll kind of explain it as we go. So first off, right away, if you made your project with starter content, you can go up to the content folder, right? Here's my mouse. You see them floating around. I'm coming down to the bottom left. I'm selecting content, and I'm going to clear out my filter, and I'm just going to type in fire and hit enter. And there's my particle fire, which I can just drag into my scene. Real time is on. If real time is not on, it'll say real time off. You can turn it on. All right. I'm going to hit delete to remove that fire. If you did not create a scene with starter content, just make another scene or make a brand new project that has starter content. And what you can do is go find where the fire is inside that starter project, right click and say Asset Actions, Migrate, right? And it'll ask you maybe to save your map, right? Depends on whether or not. And then it's going to give you a list of every asset that's required to make that asset. In this case, this is particle fire, and so there's quite a few things. You would say okay, and then you would navigate to the content folder you want to copy that into. All right? And then you could delete that old project and go back to your class project. All right, let's go in here. I'm going to need another actor. I'm going to clear out my little fire filter here. I don't need that. So what I need at this point is I need to bring in my brazier, which I don't think I did. So I'm going to pause real quick while I bring that in. All right, I brought in my brazier. I'm going to show you something real quick. I'm going to click View Options and go into Thumbnail Edit Mode. You see any of these objects, like these materials, they get these little icons in the corner. If you click on them, you can change what type of view type they are. I kind of like to have mine be boxes, to be honest. You can have them be a plane, a cylinder, or a sphere. So I'm going to just say done editing, and then I need to resave them all. Okay, so I have a brazier. It's in here now. If I drag it in, there it is. There's my nice little brazier. I'm going to delete that. Don't need to worry about that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, right click, say blueprint class, and I'm going to say actor, and I'm going to call this BP underscore brazier underscore A. I'm going to click, it's going to open it up, and once again, I'm going to click on brazier A final, and then that just happens to be the name of it. I'm going to come over to add component and say static mesh, and it's going to add that in, and there we go. There's my brazier actor. Just remember, you want to change that mesh to be static, and then you're going to hit compile and save. All right, now from here, let's go back up to content, and up in the filter, I'm going to type in fire and hit enter. And now there's my particle fire. I'm going to select it. And here I'm going to come up to add component. You can see now it says particle system P fire. If I click, that adds it in. Right, there it is. It's sitting there. So remember, turn off your snap, and then you can raise this up inside the scene or inside this little component, right? Then raise it up a little bit more. It might clip through the bottom a little bit. All right, I'm going to hit compile and save. And if I clear out that filter again, I can come back up to props, and there's my blueprint brazier. I could drop that in. So here's one of the reasons it's generally not best practice, because I could easily just clone this and get a lot of actors out here real quick with particles going. So you're learning, what I'm showing you here, you got to be really careful with. All right, let's take it a step further into the danger category. I'm going to compile and save this. I'll come back up here to the brazier A final. I'm going to add another component, and it's going to be a point light. So now I'm really playing loose and free with best practices because I've added a dynamic light, which you can only have, I believe it's 6. You can only have this radius. That's the area affected by this dynamic light. So you can only have 6 of them. It's 5 or 6 of them overlapping before they start turning off and you get those red X's. Keep in mind there's a directional light inside your scene, right? You can find that by starting to type directional, right? He is right here, right? He controls the overall sunlight inside your scene. He is a dynamic light, so you need to be aware that he's there. So he's already counting as 1. So anything else you add beyond that, right, is just going to be even more. So what you could do is you could flag it as static, but then it's kind of a hybrid of a baked light and a dynamic light, and the same rule applies. If you're okay with just having it be a visual light, you could flag it as static, and then you can have as many as you want. The problem is, in this case, we still have this particle fire, and so we probably want to be careful about that. One thing we could do to reduce the overall light's influence is there is an option here for attenuation radius. We could type in something lower, like 512 or 256, and then it's only going to light up a small area, so we'll probably want to make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And then since it is a flame, I'm going to pop open my handy dandy Kelvin lighting chart. So a candle flame ends up being in this 1850 to 1930 range. Since it's kind of a, since it's more of like a roaring flame, let's try putting like a Kelvin value of 3000 in, right? And you can just type in Kelvin lighting chart and you will find those. There's so many online. So if I say use temperature and I type in a value like 3000, you'll see it starting to light up in here, and you can even check that by changing, I guess there's not a lighting only. I'm going to just hit compile and save, and then let's drag this into our scene. There we go. I'm going to drop it in. You see how it's casting this little bit of yellow light. If I turn off the use temperature, you see how it's just a white light. And so using temperature allows us to kind of get that effect. Oops. But now I do have a light and a particle, and they're associated with my object in my scene. And so remember, as Stan Lee once wrote, with great power comes great responsibility. So you just got to be careful how you're using this, how much you're using them, how close and how often they are. And just remember, these are just sprites, these little light actors. As soon as you hit play inside your scene, those are gone. Right? You don't see them anymore. Or, for that matter, if you just hit G on your keyboard, that'll put you in game mode, and then you won't see them either. So that's the second part of the blueprints. That's the part about adding, kind of setting up these little braziers with the fire in them.